Okay, who would like to start?
Might as well since I'm already up.
Hey, Joe.
So Darcy, fantastic job connecting with youth groups, with their service organizations, uh, developing the information. What are you doing to make sure that you stay fresh on that information and youth are continuing to be engaged in a research and understanding sort of way?
That's a great question, Joe. And of course, COVID created an obstacle for sure, because right when we were going back for another round of sharing the results, it was in March and we lost that opportunity. We have, in terms of updating the research, we don't have a plan for that yet. And I'd love to hear your experience about kind of what would an update look like, but we have continued those relationships. We did a policy plan update, and we went back and did engagement with Urban Roots around that policy plan engagement, and we've sort of pretty regularly incorporated them into the work. And we also, because we are working more with jurisdictional stakeholders than we are with the public directly, we didn't want to hold those relationships ourselves. So for example, Three Rivers Park District and Dakota County have both continued work with some of these organizations in their efforts. So that's a piece that's happened as well. We did, we had a relationship with these youth organizations for, let's see, from September of 2019 until March of 2020 that we were seeing them on a pretty regular basis. But in terms of ongoing pieces, we still are in touch with them and send opportunities their way, but we don't have yet a plan for that continued research. So what would be, like, in terms of updating, share a little bit about that priority and what that might look like.
I don't know that I have an answer for that. I'm just kind of exploring here a little bit. One thing I've always had an interest in, if you've got and this wouldn't be necessarily at your level, maybe more your implementing agencies like you were mentioning, if they've got a Parks Commission or an advisory committee or something like that, are there ways that you could add either a full seat or some sort of advisory seat that is dedicated for a youth member to serve on? Or something like that, that could just help to make sure that that voice continues to be at the table as things continue to develop.
Right, that's a great point, is exploring that kind of Parks and Open Spaces Commission connection with youth and having a youth representative. Yeah,
just a thought.
That's a great thought.
Anyone else have feedback, comments, questions? I guess if the whole time I'm thinking, how can we do a research project with the same focus to identify the disparities that are actually the biggest barriers in greater Minnesota? I think that would be a beautiful project. And I'm not sure how we would go about it, but I think it's something that's at least worth discussing as an organization with the commission and our membership as well. So Joe, maybe we can talk to Renee a little bit and get some ideas flowing about that. Other thoughts from like the private perspective? Andrew, I think Chuck left, but
I really liked the recommendation to empower youth as leaders in the design process. And that's not something that we always see in projects. And so I'm wondering, how do groups start to include that in RFPs as part of the engagement process, or do you have any recommendations on how we achieve that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am a big believer in reaching out to a youth serving organization, and because kind of creating an in-park experience rather than sort of a I mean, pop-ups are successful, but people have to be in the park already. And then the sort of, we often disparage the coffee and cookies in the library. I don't know if that exists anymore with COVID, but that sort of off-site people, when you ask people to think of things without actually being in the space, they're speaking in the abstract often, and so I think putting in the RFP of the idea of an in-park experience with a youth serving organization. And of course, it involves developing relationships with those organizations. Sometimes building that ahead of time in some way. And I think one that we didn't get to tap into that I think that there's a lot of, AP environmental science courses in a lot of schools that those folks also, there are kind of interest organizations, often ethnic interest organizations that are another place that we have had some success building connections. So a school club or an after school organization. But it's a smaller group, and I think sometimes we've been taught so much that like surveys are the best, like talking to as many people as possible are the best, but going in depth with a small group of even 5, 10, 15 youth, you can really dive in with them and explore those relationships. And we do have the field research challenge that we did for the Washington County planning effort that you could use. I think it's a pretty plug-in. We used it at all 5 sites. So it's something that you could use if you brought youth into a space. And we also have the focus group questions that we ask where we explored with parents. And we had a youth discussion group where we gave the questions to a young person and they led that discussion with their peers. And that was part of the in-park experience. So that's something else that you could do. Andrew, that was a very long answer.
No, that's great. It got me kind of thinking, like that after school activity thing. Could you work with a school district to bring students out to the field and talk about, aquatic insects or plant ID? And then is there a community room in that park where you could roll out some plans and kind of talk about, okay, how do we redesign this park or master plan this park to be more inclusive or function better for this kind of, or for them, for their own personal use. Yeah, it would be, we've had a number of projects where, like, we've done a project at the Minnesota Zoo where we've worked with kids with little models, physical models and stuff, and they're amazing. I mean, they have great ideas.
Yeah. And the great thing with teens, I love younger kids too, but teens, you can take them to a nature-based park and especially in a group where they know each other, and they can kind of run loose a little bit, and explore that space and a little bit more. You don't have to worry about, whereas 5-year-olds, you can't do that as much. So teens are easier to work with in that way. The one last thing about working with the group is when you think about when you go into a park, that's your workplace. Like, you've been there a lot, you're familiar, you know what you're going to expect, and you bring a young person in, they've maybe never seen that park before, they have no idea what they're going to experience. There's this context, this kind of unequal context of it being really familiar to the programming staff and really unfamiliar to the new visitor, and thinking about how are you building trust and confidence when that newcomer comes.
I saw Marcia turned her camera on. You have something to add to the discussion?
No, not really. I just thought it was really interesting. We're about to kind of do a master planning process. And so I was just thinking about how to engage teens in that. It didn't really occur to me until we started really this discussion. And when you started talking about park planning, we certainly involved them in our skate park. But they were definitely motivated to come around the table because it was built for them. Nothing worse than a bunch of adults trying to plan a skate park. So they were definitely motivated and they were there, and we had a planning charrette and they planned the whole park. So I just, as you were talking, like, Andrew, that was amazing. Like, that whole conversation, and Darcy, it just generated a lot of thoughts for me on our our high school and the career academics and small groups and a focus group on how to have more features in our parks specifically for that teen group. We have a natural playground and we're adding some really cool features to our parks, but how are we really getting that teens into our parks, and how are we programming for them, and how are we really focusing on them other than, are we, and what are their needs? I don't know. I mean, I have one, but other than me driving her all over town, I really don't know. So it was a really good, I just took a whole list of thoughts that I think is going to be helpful. So I just wanted to thank everyone. That was an awesome discussion. Gave me a lot to think about and how to really plug them into our next process that we'll be starting. So mostly thanks. Awesome.
Thanks, Marcia. I second that. Absolutely. I see Jody turned her camera on.
Yeah, thanks again, Darcy. I just met you yesterday, so this is really fantastic to now hear your presentation today.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, I apologize. I had to join the meeting a few minutes late, so if you already covered this, we can talk offline. But I was really intrigued by the slide and the presentation portion about compensating youth for their time and their expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you have some kind of specific examples, or is there a framework for how to help guide our clients if they are looking to hire youth to do some of this work or some of this outreach work, and is that part of the toolkit?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So there's not a model in the research for kind of long-term long-term hiring youth. That we had 3 to 5 meetings with each youth. So in the toolkit, we have a memorandum of understanding that we used to create the micro consultancy with the youth serving organization. So we did we paid a $4,000 stipend to the youth serving organization with a pretty clear list of expectations and also accountability for ourselves of what we were going to offer. And that was drafted by procurement, which is as somebody new to government work, that was super helpful to have something that I knew was legit in that way. In terms of youth compensation, so we offered a $20 gift card to each young person that participated in the project, whether they came to all the events or they just came to the validity conversation or just the in-park event. We gave them a certificate of completion, which was really important to some of the cultural groups that, for example, Librarians of Minnesota, they really wanted to think through how could youth put this participation experience on their college application. So that was part of that. We talked through what skills would you say what is the title of this participation opportunity. So that was another form of compensation that wasn't financial. And then we also but we would list all of these together. There's you've participated, you have your certificate, you have the $20 gift card, and then also food, that we would provide the meals. So, which was, I think, more appreciated sometimes than the cash was the banh mi sandwiches or whatever. So, yeah, but I think that your idea of sort of hiring long term, so hiring a group of youth to be sort of long range consultants or work with other youth, that's a piece we captured that. In fact, I wanted to hire high school students to be interns on the project, and there wasn't a financial mechanism to do that within the council. So we worked all with college students for the project.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle to kind of think about. And yeah, definitely, I mean, anytime we incorporate money, that's another wrinkle. So I'm excited to kind of see how this might play out in future projects, just with this group.
And it was an explicit shift too of really stating outright that there's expertise that the organizations and that youth are bringing to the process. You know, it's not just, in fact, we didn't use it as compensation for time. It was more, you know, a stipend because of their expertise.
Great. I love that wording. Thank you.
Okay, so I see we're at 1 minute to 12, and I want to respect everybody's time. So I would put a call out for one last question or comment. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And my apologies again for not getting this quite as good as I could have, but I'll be better next time. So I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll be putting something out on the website here with Darcy's information, and her email is in the chat, as well as the website that has the toolkit and all the other information. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Great to see
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.